Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Free Birth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Hi, everyone. We are back. Oh, my goodness. With season 4 of the Free Birth Society podcast. 4 years? My God. This is so exciting. It's crazy. It's hard for me to even wrap my head around it. I'm Emily Saldea, and wow, just what a year. I do want to send my love out to each and every one of you with a reminder that now is the time to shed ourselves of the bullshit, to set those boundaries, purify that toxicity, increase that self-care, and stand for the light. We have to make it mean that, right? This year is such a deep invitation for all of us to fully embody our roles as powerful women in our communities, matriarchal leaders in our families, and to stand together for and with women and families and ourselves. I know that we're all feeling the polarization, the intensity, but remember, your sisters are out there. We are all here doing the good work, and we have to stay connected. So, with that, there's a lot going on over here at Free Birth Society, per usual. We have a lot of amazing new courses in the pipeline for later this year, but most excitingly, enrollment is open for the second round of our incredible program, the Radical Birthkeeper School. So if you have the call to become an authentic midwife and step up in your community, join us. We want you with us. I'm so proud of what we've done here, and it will sell out, so get your space over at radicalbirthkeeperschool.com. Let's see what else. My family and I are moving to the Southeast. We have found a really special place that can be a home to not only us, but to the next iteration of the vision of what Free Birth Society is and what it can be. So I want you to picture acreage, yurts, deep spring water, woods, food forests, dark starry nights, hot tubs and pools and hiking and chickens and dancing and singing and fires, all coming together with women. I can't wait. And it's really happening. I'm quite thrilled. So more on that later. I also have been feeling our next baby pretty strongly in our household. I'm noticing that he's with me all the time. So that really has the beginning tingles of all the excitement that comes with preparing to call in new life into my body, into my heart, my home, my family. Really excited to, start to open that up and feel that again and welcome our next baby in next year sometime. So with that, I'm excited to introduce to you the first guest of season 4, my amazing friend Jess from Arizona, who chose a free birth after her first birth resulted in a fear-mongering C-section due to breech presentation. Tired of being pathologized in the system, Jess began to feel the presence of her daughter, and she turned towards trust, had a wild pregnancy, and roared her baby into the world.
Actually, when I was 14, I had this intense awakening to motherhood. And I was at this church activity, and they did this activity where we had to stand behind a tree, and then it was late at night. Sounds kind of weird, but whatever. We stood behind a tree, and then one of the leaders stood behind on the other side of the tree, and she asked you questions as if she were your daughter. and just asking how much you love her and how you'll take care of her and what kind of life you're going to have. And it just like made me plunge into it all. And I just started feeling my children so deeply.
Wow.
And I started studying all of this stuff. I started studying child development and got way into all these things. What was funny is that I was taking a child development class, and of course they're like, you have to go to the hospital. And so I was planning how I was going to have a natural childbirth and fight everybody in the hospital. And so that was what I was thinking. As I got older, I started to research more about home birth. I had an aunt that had several home births that I had actually attended, but I was just a kid and didn't know what I was missing. So I was just in the living room watching movies. No idea what I was missing.
Oh my God, that's so cute. Miracle life's happening next door, but
I know, it's fine. I'll just be in here. Sounds boring anyway. But I ended up watching, of course, The Business of Being Born, which like every, home birther watches at first, and it, deifies midwives way too much, which was kind of my problem that carried into my first birth. So a couple years after I had watched that and started researching home birth, I, met my husband. We fell in love very quickly, got married very quickly. And I told him, I was like, well, I'm going to have a home birth. And he's like, okay, cool. That makes sense. And he looked up some statistics, was super supportive. I have endometriosis, and a lot of my aunts that have had it, they had trouble with infertility. So I just thought, oh, that's going to be my story. Like I'm going to be infertile, and then, I'm going to get myself more healthy. I'm going to figure it out. And within a few years, I'll be able to get pregnant. So I just thought it was going to be a process for me. So I started the fertility awareness method, and I got pregnant just right off the bat. So I was like, oh, that was just a few months after we got married. We were not financially ready.
Whoa.
I just thought, I was like, well, I'll just start the process, because I had felt my children once again right after we got married, and they were kind of saying like, hey, we're going to come soon, like get ready. And I was like, oh, this means get ready. They're going to come in a few years once I get fertile. No, they were starting right away.
Because you were already fertile.
Yeah, I was already fertile. I had no idea. So,
gosh, just the story of like the brokenness of our bodies, like the disconnection.
Ridiculous. Yes. Oh my goodness. I had no idea. I'm so glad that I was able to overcome that and not like, cause I knew in my mind, I was like, I will get pregnant. Like I definitely will. It will be a process though. So I thought I was broken and that I would heal, but it turns out that I was fertile.
It was just a story. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a story I made up in my brain, probably to, I don't know, just in case I was infertile. I wanted to make sure that I was protected or whatever I did. Anyway, I was pregnant. My family was very freaked out by how fast I got pregnant. I was kind of freaked out too. But yeah, I sought after a midwife very quickly. And all I did was, since, every midwife is perfect and they're all the same, I just looked up the midwives in my area. We were in Ohio at the time. And I just looked at some pictures and I was like, oh, that one looks nice. I'll call her. So I called her, didn't really interview her, but her and I did have a really great connection, which I love. That was really nice. But yeah, I was just like, well, I'm going to choose you as my midwife. She's like, oh, you don't have any questions? I was like, no, you're a midwife. You're good. We're good. Mistake number one, of course. So she's like, oh, I'm going to just need another midwife with me. I'm not officially licensed in Ohio. I'm licensed in another state. So I just need another midwife with me. And I'm going to choose one, which was mistake number two, because this midwife I did not connect with at all.
Ooh.
I really didn't. And I was trying so hard. And I was like, well, my midwife said that this midwife would work with me really well. And she thought we'd get along. So we're going to have to get along. And we did, But
right. But the framing should have been, so in order for me to do this within, the licensure and my comfort zone, I do need another midwife. Let's go through the couple I know and see who you land with, and anyone you don't vibe with, no questions asked, I'll just try a different one out. You know what I mean? Like it could be, there's a win-win there that just doesn't get presented.
No, it doesn't. And I've just seen that. I've seen that with, I interviewed some other midwives in this pregnancy. That's for later. But I've just seen that over and over again. It's like, oh, and I'll have another person with me. And it's like, okay.
Right.
Why am I interviewing you with
faceless, irrelevant thing? When in fact, in many stories, it's the thing that sabotages the whole freaking birth.
And that's basically what happened. So I asked her for, so I started meeting with them. I asked about ultrasound. I was like, can you send me some studies about that? Because I don't know how I feel about it, but I want to understand. She basically said it doesn't improve outcomes, but it would be really helpful, if we had those measurements. And I was like, oh, I want to help them because, it's not about me. And then, of course, everyone's like asking me, are you going to find out the gender? Are you going to find out the gender? Because it's so important. And I'm never going to find it out if I don't find it out in the middle of my pregnancy, apparently. So we got the ultrasound. And once they got the results, found out we were having a boy. Very exciting. Yeah. So they got the results and this was nice. They came to my home and they sat me down. And they're like, okay, we need to tell you something that we found in the ultrasound. So they found that there's a septate in my uterus. We later found out it's just this little thing. It's not a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal.
It's a uterus.
Yeah.
They were kind of making it a big deal.
It's a variation of normal that like with everything could run with a different set of potential risks, but everything comes with its own set of risks. Wow, sitting you down, that's so intense.
I know. I was like, but I had this feeling like they were like, oh, you should seek care, secondary care, seek for somebody else just in case or whatever.
Well, not somebody else, a doctor.
Yeah. Exactly. Not just
we need a man on the case.
I know. What's up with that?
Your uterus is slightly different than other uteruses that we've seen here. It's just so crazy. It's so the whole model is so committed to pathologizing. It's just everything. It literally never ceases to amaze me. There's no normalcy allowed. It's really quite startling. Anyway, so they found the thing, right? They found the thing now. Yeah.
The thing so that I could get secondary care. And this was like my intuition was just like, this is going to be fine. This is not going to be a problem. So I just told them, I was like, it's going to be fine. And the second midwife, I'll call her midwife number 2, the one that came when I didn't want her there. But she was saying that she's like, oh, I've actually attended a birth where the woman had an arcuate uterus and everything was fine and the baby was head down. And I was like, well, then
me too. Yeah.
Let's just do this. Yeah. I was like, well, let's just do this then. I don't really need secondary care. And they're like, oh, okay. And
the other piece here that's interesting specifically with that variation of normal of the uterus is all the women who haven't had ultrasounds have no idea. Like I could have that same shape,
Yes.
and
oh my gosh,
I'm none the wiser. Right. So it's only it is like, it's like, obviously the age of over information. Like what does that piece of information do that helped? And obviously you're strong enough and a free thinker enough that you were able to kind of filter through the path they were trying to set you on, right? Which is a highly medicalized experience.
Yeah. And it was just so funny because I just kept thinking, I'm like, it's not like women haven't had this before midwives were certified and before we had ultrasound and before all of this happened. Like this is anyway. So I just felt super cool and normal about it. So we did talk about the fact that I was a Black woman and some statistics around that. And honestly, I was kind of uneducated in the sense that I was like, I was like, oh, is it because of, poverty
Sure.
and because of, not being educated to advocate for themselves? And they were like, no. So like they understood like the general like reality,
And were
of it
they
all.
white midwives?
So one of my midwife number 1 is Indigenous,
Okay.
and midwife number 2 is white.
Okay.
But they were very worried about like the statistics, that like I could fall into those statistics.
Wait,
So
I'm
that was
trying to track.
interesting.
I'm trying to track with that. So,
Yeah.
but you were choosing home birth. So what was the concern? Like why even bring it up? What do you think the angle was? Like, obviously it's important to understand on a social level and as a birth activist and as a woman. And yes, of course. But at the same time, I'm like putting myself in their shoes of is it just to understand the system and further support home birth? Or what do you think?
What was weird is that, so they said a lot of the statistics are there. They didn't acknowledge the system as much, which was interesting. They acknowledged just the overall stress of being a Black woman in America is what affected the statistics. So that was interesting. I was interesting. All right, I'll try not to stress out.
Right. I'll try to navigate the inherent racism of the world a little more calmly. Like, yeah, it's a little. And actually, it does bring up an interesting point that I don't actually know. Like, what are the midwifery attended home birth statistics of Black women in North America? Because I'm only familiar with, I mean, it still is an aspect of the system. They are still being medicalized and but it's not. It's
different.
Yeah, it's different. And so that is an interesting thing I don't actually know. So if anyone's listening, please email me and let me know if you happen to know, because I'm only familiar with industrial statistics.
Right. Yeah, so the things that they were bringing up with me was preterm labor, having a really, really small baby, insufficient placenta. They were bringing up just all kinds of things that I just didn't. Anyway, I don't know. And then not being able to gain weight during pregnancy. So I'm rather skinny. So they were operating on this weird assumption that I'm obsessed with being skinny. So they're like, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat more, you need to eat more. So that was like a huge stress for me. I was like trying to gain weight my whole pregnancy, but.
Well, and that's really interesting to see that connection between.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you just said that because, this isn't just about navigating systemic racism in the system. This is about navigating the stress, the inherent stress of experiencing racism, if that is your experience, right? And of course that can cause physical repercussions or whatever, like the things that you just said. But at the same time, it's really interesting how it sounds like there's a connection of if they're perceiving you as that and that you're going to experience that, then how that also creates a pretty gross loop of being overly obsessed with your lack of weight gain because it's through this potential, and I'm not in their brain, so I don't really know this, but it sounds like there's a real connection there of being, seeing you through this lens. It's really interesting.
You explained that so well. I'm always trying to explain how that weird loop is. Right. It's and I'm maybe using this term incorrectly, but it's kind of like the white savior thing where it's like, oh, we need to save you from this. But it's like, it's not even applicable to me. Like they're assuming that it's applicable to me just because of the color of my skin.
Right.
And it actually wasn't. Like I was gaining weight. Like once, we got a little further in the pregnancy, they're like, oh, you're good.
Right. But it's also strange to project that onto somebody in their own home in this really individualized way and almost expect it and then see you through that lens. It doesn't get the problem with that. Of course, there's many problems, but it doesn't give you the opportunity to rewrite that story. It doesn't give you the opportunity to be a healthy, powerful woman who isn't experiencing that, which is one of my greatest critiques around almost what's the right word here? Like the hyper, almost obsessive discussion around race is it's like they need it to continue in order to fight against it. And so
yes,
I'm hearing you say you weren't actually experiencing tremendous stress from a lot of either overt or, subtle racism, and you weren't having that experience, but you still were perceived as that. Yeah, that's quite the interesting little gaslighting loop there.
yes.
Yeah.
Very well explained. Yes, in the end, it truly focusing on that from them focusing on that did not serve me. Like I needed help in other ways because I'm not just the color of my skin. I'm an entire person who's so complex. There's so many other things that I need from my midwives than them just being aware of and projecting statistics around my race onto me.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So there becomes this kind of obsession around your body or lack of weight gain, which sounds really stressful.
Yeah.
So now they've pathologized you twice.
Oh, it's going to happen more. Just you wait. It's super fun.
Yeah, hang on to your seats, everybody.
I'm also a little bit anemic. So they were watching that and I was fine. Most of my pregnancy with that, my levels were fine. So there was that. I had this intuition that my baby was going to be breech. So I started researching about that and I was like, oh, duh, I can just do this at home. This isn't a big deal at all. Like my baby's going to be breech. It's going to be fine. And so I started trying to have conversations with them around that. And they were like trying to avoid that conversation at all costs. They're like, your baby's not going to be breech. I was like, I really think he is. And I really want to be prepared. So what's your plan if my baby's breech?
Yeah. Was there any transparency about like, oh, we'll fully abandon you and bully you into surgery?
No, there was not much conversation around that. They said, the one thing that she said is, we know of a couple midwives that may attend a home birth for breech baby. So that's all they really said about it. And they're like, let's stop talking about it. It'll be fine. You're not going to have one. I'm like, no, I know it's fine because I know that if I have a breech baby, I can have a home birth. So it's fine. It really is. This isn't a fear that I have. This is something I want to be prepared for. That was all it was.
Wow.
But they thought that I was like being scared. And they were like, no. I will say this just about the middle of the pregnancy really quickly. And then I need to move on because my pregnancy and birth was just so interesting with my first. I did start researching unassisted birth in the middle of my pregnancy and it resonated with me, unassisted, free birth. And it resonated with me deeply. And I did the classic, okay, I'm going to have a home birth with midwives and then I'm going to have the rest. I did it. I did the thing. Have the rest all free. Let's just see how my body births. That's what I was. So, but I had every reason in my mind, I had every reason to believe that my midwives would not turn on me. But I hadn't seen that in my pregnancy that I was already having to fight for my birth that I wanted. I didn't notice that at all until towards the very end when I started writing out my birth plan. And I was like, all right, I don't want monitoring. I don't want you to check me vaginally. I don't want anybody around me once the baby's born. I want you out of my field. Like I started saying things like that. And they're like, okay, that's a nice thought. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. We have to do this, and this in order to, fill out our paperwork. And I didn't.
I'm feeling like I just really want to plug our school really quick because you are such an ideal like that. When women come to me and say, I don't want this. I don't want this. I just want you out of my field. I just want you kind of like managing the household and and I just do my thing. Like that is what a powerful, what a beautiful thing for a woman, particularly a first-time birthing woman who's overcoming quite a bit of story already. Like there's already so much in your story. Just what a tender, vulnerable, and powerful thing to say to your attendants, and that wasn't even remotely celebrated. I'm just going to plug our school and say everyone who needs to go become a radical birth keeper and actually learn authentic midwifery, because whether it's our school or somewhere else, please, because what you just said, Jess, is so profoundly beautiful and special. And it's like it's the mother speaking through you. It's so beautiful. And I just, that really sucks that it's an understatement, obviously, that wasn't even remotely celebrated. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. And so at that point, it was the end of my pregnancy. These were the only two, other than my husband. My mom was, in another state, so she couldn't really be there for me physically, but they were the only two physically that were there for me. The only community I had in terms of women that understood even a little bit what birth is supposed to be like. And I had, had lots of people pushing fears on me around home birth and me having to manage that already. And so now my midwives are like, we can't give you the birth that you want. And so I was like, so my people pleasing, kicked in, and I was like, oh, okay, it's fine. Next time I'll be, ready. So came time, 36 weeks, midwife number 2 palpated a breech baby. And I was like, I knew it. This is great. I'm having a breech baby. This is going to be fun. And they were like, oh, well, we know of a hospital that will do breech vaginal births. And we also know a couple midwives, but we want you to go to a, ultrasound place or whatever and confirm it. And I was like, well, I feel like the baby's probably breech, but they really wanted me to confirm it. So,
well, you can't be trusted.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. So we went in, and to put it so simply, the ultrasound tech was just a jerk. She must have been having a really bad day. She was just mean. She's like, all right, your baby's footling breech. And then she was like, and he also looks small. And then that's all she said.
Whoa.
So
charming.
Yeah. Yeah, totally charming. And what's so funny is after that, I was on the phone with one of my midwives, and she said, oh, if the baby's small, that's fine. Midwife number 1. She's like, that's fine. That's normal. Babies grow at different rates. It's okay. And she said, I have a midwife. She works with Amish women that refuse to go to the hospital. And I was like, sick. Give me her number. I would love to, pay her to come and attend. And the next morning, midwife number 2 called and said, your baby is way too small based on what I saw. Looks like he's going to be like 3 to 4 pounds. And that's not ideal for how far you are in your pregnancy. I want you to go to the hospital tomorrow. Can you meet us there? I was like, whoa, what? And that just really gave me, like a panic attack. Because I'm like, I know my baby's fine. Like, I just knew it. And what's funny is that I was already following Free Birth Society, and I commented on one of your photos, and I just told my story. Like, it was something about making a choice for you or something like that. And I commented, and I was like, my midwives want me to go to the hospital. I have a breech baby that they think is small. And you commented back, so sweet. You were like, you do not have to go. Like, you said all the right things. But I was at a stage in my life where I prioritized pleasing other people and making other people feel comfortable over myself. And so,
and the irony should not be lost on anyone that these midwives are stressing a Black woman out and pushing her into the system. Like, that is just,
oh my gosh.
Right?
Exactly. So, I need to try to
you
be
weren't
quick.
you weren't even stressed until this happened. Like,
right when that happened, like, it just all just crumbled. Like, I just crumbled. I had a panic attack. Totally. I had this vision while I was crying in my husband's arms, just not knowing what to do, of having a cesarean section. Like, I just knew that was going to happen, and them just taking my baby away and me just screaming and not being able to move. And so, I mean, a lot happened. A family member, heard about the fact that we were considering not going to the hospital, and they called a doctor to come and visit us without telling us.
Whoa.
Just crazy crazy. I just need to gloss over it because like so much happened. For goodness sake. So annoying. Let's get to my power story. So I went to the hospital, put on a smile, disassociated from my body. And I knew they were going to suggest a cesarean section. It's a breech baby that's small. So I go in there, they do the ultrasound. I mean, this was a pretty, like, in terms of like niceness, like everybody in the hospital was, nice, like vocally, like smiling, whatever. But the OBGYN doing the ultrasound, he was like, okay, I'm finding some things I don't like. I was like, oh, that's nice to hear. I don't like that language at all. But anyway, he said, your baby looks like he's 3 to 4 pounds. He's breech. Your placenta is calcifying. And you have low amniotic fluid.
Oh my God, I hate this story.
And meanwhile, I'm like,
what week are you again?
Pretending. Huh?
What week are you at this point?
37.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm just smiling at him while internally having a panic attack again. And so, of course, my baby's heart rate is dropping.
Yeah.
So they're just like, so I was like, all right, what do you suggest? He's like, a C-section. And I just said, is there no other way? And he said, I don't think so, but what do you want? And I said, well, I would like to have a vaginal birth at home. And he's like, oh, I don't think that's a good option. Why did you ask me what I want? Anyway, so and this is, another thing I might gloss over a little bit, but it is very important, is the fact that I'm a Black woman in a hospital where they can declare me an unfit mother very, very easily.
So scary.
I know. So I was just like, my midwives had threatened the day before. I didn't say this. They had threatened, to abandon me if I didn't go to the hospital. They said that my baby could die. I'm in this just like incredibly like sticky situation. I was thinking about my family who doesn't agree with a lot of my husband and I's choices, saying like, if, something did happen, it's all your fault. You should have done the cesarean. I'm having my midwives completely staying quiet, not saying anything. I kept turning to them for like any just shred of hope. And they're just staring at their phones and computers and whatever. And I was just completely disassociated from my body. And I knew that I could not deny the cesarean. Like I just knew it. Like I was completely trapped. So I was like, put a smile on once again. Great. Where's the freaking paperwork? So signed the paperwork. They shaved me. They waxed me. Some people came in and out without saying a thing. Some people were nice and had conversations with me. There was a couple nurses that were really interested in the fact that I wanted to do seeding after the cesarean to help my son's microbiome. Anyway, they were really impressed with how informed I was. Meanwhile, I'm being abused. I'm like, my information is not helping me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I ended up having an OBGYN who was very short with me, and she didn't do anything I wanted her to, and it was all within reason. It was all cesarean section, stuff that you can ask for. And the only thing she said yes to was, oh, I like working with music. Because we asked if we could put on our playlist. She's like, I like working with music. I'm like, oh, good for you, as long as you're comfortable. I got,
working.
I know.
What a gross word.
I know. It's like, oh, I'm going to be involved if you didn't know. I got my, spinal block, whatever it's called, right before I almost passed out because I was looking at, the needle going into my arm. I almost passed out. The anesthesiologist scoffed and rolled his eyes. He was really upset that he couldn't do it right away. So I had to regain my consciousness, and then he did it. Baby came out. I got to watch. They didn't think I wanted to watch. They kept doubting that. It was like, I want to watch. They took forever, took their time checking him, but I knew he was perfect the moment he came out. I was like, he's fine. Give him to me right now. And I was just crying and saying, give him to me now. And the nurse just had the audacity, because she's in this working environment where she can't humanize people. And she had the audacity to just take her time and say, oh, I have to measure him. It's like,
Whoa.
the kid is fine. He's crying.
And like measurements matter.
Yeah. And so he ended up being almost 6 pounds. The ultrasound was completely wrong, of course. And he was perfect. He was just perfect.
The robbery.
He was healthier than I was when all was said and done. He gained weight in the hospital. He nursed right away. Like, he was just perfect. Anyway, so recovering from that experience was so weird because I let myself disassociate from the experience for a long time. I knew it wasn't ideal. I knew the abuse that happened, and I knew that my experience mattered, but I disassociated it as if I were telling somebody else's story every time I would tell the story. And it wasn't actually until I got pregnant with my daughter that it actually hit me. So
did you, in postpartum, like as you're processing, I'm hearing you say you knew like things were wrong, you knew abuse, you knew your son was fine. Now you had proof of it. And are you angry or are you just like survival?
Just survival.
Yeah.
Like, I think my husband and I started like talking about it more and getting angry about it more, like maybe like after my son was a year old.
Yeah.
Like we knew it was wrong, but like we just didn't even know how to talk about it.
Right. And it's one of those fucked up things. So many families are put in this position of like, and like, yeah, it's fucked up. And like, what are we going to do about it? Now we have this newborn. We're having very complex feelings because we're in love with our child and we're figuring out the just total blissful chaos of having a child and your relationship is readjusting and everything. And then your family's around, but they didn't really support you, but now they're a part of the baby's life. So it's like very, very complicated. And so
very complicated.
It makes total sense that you just like,
no room.
You backburner.
Yeah. So a couple years pass. We ended up being in a rough situation, weird transition, living with my mom. And last year, at the beginning of the year, I started feeling a feminine presence with me. And I was like, okay, not now. We're in a crappy situation. Not now. I'm so sorry. So I wrote her a letter. I wrote her a really nice letter. I said, I love you so much. We are going to welcome you into our family. Now is not a good time. So
then what did you do with the letter? Where'd you put it?
Oh, I just have it. I don't know. I just have it somewhere. I don't know where it is actually. But I wrote it to her and I know that she received it. I just know that. So we just went through just a crappy time last year. And things started looking up a little bit more in the fall. And that's when I got pregnant with her. And we were not planning at all. Like it was like kind of conscious conception because I knew she wanted to come. And I knew that we were like preparing for that, but she came much sooner. Despite my very loose efforts in using the fertility awareness method. Oops. Oh no, don't know how that happened. So I was still nursing my son. So I totally thought, anyway. So we got pregnant. First trimester was very rough as we were still transitioning out of our rough transition.
Yeah. And you have a 2-year-old.
And I have a 2-year-old now. And, anyway, just with family, just all the drama and all the fun stuff. All the confusion about where the heck we're going to live.
Wow.
So I was having miscarriage dreams, not thinking that I deserved her, that she was supposed to come yet, which was very hard. In my second trimester, I stopped having miscarriage dreams in my second trimester, but I had this one dream that just finally helped me to process my birth from before. And it was a dream where I was in a hospital for some reason for my pregnancy, which I was having a wild pregnancy. So I hadn't been anywhere yet. And so I was in a hospital and someone was asking me about my last birth. And I was trying to describe to her the abuse and she was laughing. And then she brought other nurses in And they were all laughing. And I was yelling at them, telling them about my experience. And I was just yelling and crying and sobbing and just like telling them to stop laughing. And so I woke up just sobbing and freaking out. And I finally realized that it was my story. And my second trimester was so transformative. We were able to figure out where we were going to live. My husband got a great new job. Anyway, I did lots of energy healing, which was amazing. I found my doula, who is now a radical birth keeper. I'm hoping that she'll do your school. I've been hinting at it to her. But she's amazing. She had never attended a birth before. So that I was her first birth that she attended.
And how did you guys get connected?
It was so my husband and I, before the pandemic, we were giving out plants for free to clean people's air. And then people were donating back. It was so lovely and wonderful. We're so sad that we're not doing events anymore for obvious reasons. Anyway, so we met her at one of our events and she's amazing.
Clicked.
Yes, we totally just clicked. Because she said she was training to be a doula. I said, would you attend a free birth? And she was like, oh, yeah, I think I would. And so we just kept talking.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. So you already knew that you were free birthing at that point. So take me back to wherever, like, when does that really get clear for you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I knew right after I had my son that I was going to try for a free birth. So I was like, well, screw this midwife thing. This doesn't make any sense for me. I was open. So, we were living with my mom and she really wanted me to find a midwife. And, everybody else was counting on me to find a midwife. I hadn't really shared with anybody other than my mom that I was thinking about free birthing, that I was wanting to. So I did look into some midwives and was not impressed, basically, to put it very shortly. I will say one midwife, she wanted me to see an OBGYN who
fuck off.
Who she said is just like a midwife.
Ew.
And he's a man.
Ew.
It's like,
it says
that's
so much,
what I wanted to say.
It?
They're like, he's just like a midwife. And she was laughing and I was like,
just like the kind of midwife she obviously is.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then she informed me that if I did get a midwife, because she didn't want to be my midwife, she said, well, if you do get a midwife, just know that if you refuse hospital transfer, they will leave and call the ambulance. And I was like, well, I'm not
ending on a threat. That's nice.
Oh yeah. She of course said it with a smile. So I was like, well, I'm not doing that. Since I am in Arizona, I talked with Maren Green a little bit. We didn't click as like we, agree on so much, but we just didn't click. And I ended up moving really far away from Sedona. So that wasn't an option. Anyway, so I just kept having a wild pregnancy and didn't really tell anybody. I just did my own thing. I told people I had a midwife, not worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm not dealing with their complaints. So I just told them that. And I knew I would tell them that eventually that I had a free birth because that's just what I knew. I knew I was just going to do it. So in my third trimester, I just got to this great place where I was like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I had a feeling when I got pregnant with my daughter that everything was going to work out the way I wanted it to. And I knew it. I didn't always know how, but I knew that we would find a home. I knew that we would have a successful birth and that everything would be taken care of. So in the middle of towards the end actually of my third trimester, around 36 weeks, I found a midwife that supports women who want to free birth.
What does that mean?
So I called her and I heard that she would help with like paperwork.
Gotcha.
And stuff like that. So I called her and I was like, I'm going to free birth. I would love help with paperwork and maybe, some resources if I need it. And so she's like, oh, heck yeah. She's like, I'm so going to help you. So we went and visited her. She's amazing. Yeah, she's just amazing. She actually said, I'm going to give you some Zytotec. Is that what it's called?
Zytotec?
Anyway, Zytotec. Yeah, she's like, I'm just going to give this to you. And at first I was hesitant to take it. And then something inside me said, just take it.
Wow.
So I took, and I'm really glad that I decided to. So I was like, I'm going to take it. And there's just the reason I'm really glad, and we'll get into my story in a second, but I'm really glad that I did, because it was very clearly my intuition speaking and not my fear. So I took the Zytotech, had lovely conversations with her about birth, about everything that I wanted. I just fell in love with her. So I had her palpate my baby, not because I needed her to, but because I was just like, I like you, want to meet my baby. So she palpated my belly and she said, oh, your baby is so cute. Your uterus is so strong. You're going to do amazing. I love her. So that was the only really intervention that I had during my pregnancy.
Well, a woman that you like palpating your belly is not an intervention.
Imagine that. Yeah. It's like, what even is that? So, it was lovely. I was like, this is how, midwifery is supposed to feel. It's supposed to be connection. It's supposed to be just an outpouring of love and trust. She said, I trust whatever you want to do. And I was like, and she said, at the end, she said, do you want me to attend your birth as a friend? And at first I was like thinking like, oh, I just love you. Yeah, come. Geez, come and just attend as a friend. But inside me, I was like, you know what? I don't need her. And she knows I don't need her. And she's happy I don't need her. So I just told her, I was like, I love you, but I don't need you. And she said, great. Yeah. So I had a blast having nesting feelings. I could have built a home, honestly, with the energy that I had. It was freaking awesome. I loved it. I started to get a little impatient at the end because I had my son at 37 weeks. And I was like, for some reason, I thought I'd gestate my baby earlier, whatever. So I had some prodromal labor, can never pronounce it. Had some of that here and there, did some work around it because, I would get really disappointed when my labor would stop. And eventually, the day after my birthday, the labor kept going. So it was in the middle of the night, or it was actually like 10 p.m. I started saying like, oh, I think these are actual contractions that are going to keep going. So my husband and I were like, well, it's now or never. So we made love and he went to sleep and I stayed. We have a really big bathroom and closet area that I had candles around. So I just went in there and got some things ready. And then I was like, oh crap, this is happening. Because then it got really intense. So I called my doula. I called my mom. They were the only two that attended. And I had a freaking blast giving birth. Oh my gosh. Like I loved it so much. I could just cry. Like it was amazing. It ended up being 4.5 hours long. And the intensity was beautiful and so difficult. And
it's
go ahead.
Just it's like full on redemption and healing while you're doing it. I know this. I'm not saying this to you, but to everyone listening, when a woman has her birth stolen, you didn't even get anything with the first. You didn't get to feel the contraction. So the level of, and this, I have found this to be pretty darn consistently true with a few exceptions, but with women who are experiencing birth after it's been stolen from them, there's just this level of appreciation and like a yesness that is so victorious. And so like you already saw what the other side has to offer. And so it doesn't have any appeal anymore. It's like, it's cost you what it's cost you. And so now you're just in the experience and it's like a really whole, like there's a wholeness to it. That's really quite beautiful. So I'm hearing that.
Oh, good. Yeah. I can't, like, I have tried to I describe it to people and I forgot that like it was literally 5 weeks ago, and so I'm like, oh, I'm getting so annoying because I keep describing it to people and wanting to tell people. It's like, no, it's like the most amazing thing ever. So I was having contractions, taking little naps in between. Honestly, one thing I was expecting was having like some transformative like dreams or like visions. Or I remember one dream I had in between contractions was about a frog. So it was just this like casual, like
That's
just
funny.
weird, normal, taking little naps, having my contractions. Like it just felt so normal. I kept saying when I was getting impatient before I went into labor, like the last few weeks of my pregnancy, I was just like, I'm so bored. I would love to have a transformative experience right now and just give birth to a baby because I'm so bored. And like, I still feel that way. Like I'd love to do it again because it was just transformative, but also so normal. And so like, whatever. So I was laboring in the closet for quite a bit. My mom came in and she gave me like the coldest kiss on the cheek, like of my life. And I was like, all right, get off. And she started asking me all these questions. And I was like, I just want you to look at me. Don't talk to me. Just look at me. I just wanted her to see me have one contraction and then I had her leave. And then I did the same with my doula. I wanted her to just see me have one contraction and then I wanted her to get out of my space. I ended up in the shower. I might have had back labor. That's like a possibility. I think I might have. I think that's what happened because I couldn't move. I tried to have my husband do like the cute little counter pressure, husband supporting. And then the moment he did it, I was like, oh my gosh, I hate that so much. Get off of me. Hated it. I was all ready for that. So all he did the entire birth was give me a little bit of water and hold my hand. And I'm talking like I was yelling at everybody, but according to him, I was like the most polite I've ever been in my entire life. I was just really gentle and just like whispering to people and saying, oh, please get off of me. Yeah, please go over there. Thank you. But I still commanded the room and I still had command.
Well, when you have people there that actually respect you.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be polite and you can boss people around.
Totally. So, so for contractions, I wasn't sure if I was going to be loud when I labored or quiet. Turns out I'm loud because I literally couldn't breathe through them unless I was yelling.
Totally.
So I lost my voice very quickly. I said a lot of things to myself when I was yelling because might as well give yourself a motivational speech if you're going to be yelling.
Oh, yeah.
So I was saying things like open and yes, I can, and I can do this and I'm doing this and this is freaking awesome. And this is rad and give me more. I ended up in the shower and I started having pushing contractions and I didn't realize it. My husband, he left my side at one point and I was like, don't know what to do with that. Since he just left, I think I'll just go on the floor. So I was on a birthing ball and it was just funny. My logic in my brain, I'm like, time to go lay down on my side on the floor. And I think that got baby into a position, like just like the optimal position. Like it was just so instinctual and so funny and random because I've never thought, oh, I want to lay down when I'm giving, it
just happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah. So I just laid on my side. I realized I was having more pushing contractions. Like I didn't realize it before, but then I realized finally that my body was pushing my baby out, which just blew my mind and I didn't understand that. And I told my doula, I was like, maybe she just needs a little nudge. And then I realized that no, this is really happening.
Wow. Especially after 4 hours.
I know. And of course, to me, it had felt like an hour and a half, maybe. Like it just did not feel that long at all. So I thought.
You were so down for it though.
Yeah.
Like
I was
everything you're saying.
Going.
Yeah. I mean, you don't often see women have really long births and chant, give me more.
Because honestly,
that's a great mentality.
And like, I can't stress it enough. Like it was so hard. Like it was
4
so
hours.
hard.
It was obviously hard. Yeah. That's flying through your system.
But it was so powerful and so cool and so easy psychologically because I just knew I could do it.
Yeah.
Like once women know that they can do it, like that's really instilled in them. The rest of it honestly doesn't matter. Like it matters, of course, but you know what I mean? Like the pain or whatever, the intensity, it doesn't matter, especially, this is a point I really want to make, but I know we're going to run out of time soon, but gosh, like if I had been in labor in a hospital with all the bright lights, people talking to me, people putting their fingers up my yoni, I think I might have considered an epidural because
Of course.
all of that stimulation, are you kidding me? I could barely have 3 candles on. Like, I asked my husband to blow the candles out because it was too much.
I remember I had like a loose necklace on when I was pushing, and I was like, I'm gonna die. Like, get this thing off me.
Like, of course women want it's so sad though that they're
not just want, require. Yeah.
You need to get rid of that. It's so sad because it's the most important sensation that you can be feeling. Yet that's what you have to get rid of in order to exist in that environment. So I finally was like, I understand why women need epidurals in hospitals. I don't understand why they need them at home, because they don't. Because it's just,
they don't.
You just don't.
I've never heard a woman at home say she wanted an epidural. I've heard women at home say, oh, I see why women talk about them. Like, duh. Yeah. But I've never had a woman be like, I need an epidural at home. It's not until, of course. It's not until you have to check out. You have to disassociate. You're not allowed to be the wild, instinctual lioness.
It finally all just like made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got up they helped me up on a birth ball. Again, I was still in the shower with the water running. Our shower's huge, which is nice. So like everybody fit in there. Had my whole birth team in there. Along with my son.
For real? Like literally?
Like everybody, everybody fit in there. Yeah. It was like my husband, my son, my mom, my doula. So 6 people were in there.
Funny.
I know.
That's awesome.
So I felt inside myself because I was like, why the heck am I pushing? I asked my doula, I was like, am I supposed to be pushing? She's like, well, I mean, your body is pushing, isn't it? I was like, well, I guess it is. So felt inside myself. I felt this little balloon. And I was like, my cervix is fluffy. That's just what came out of my mouth, which was so funny. Yeah. So I said, my cervix is fluffy. And then I told my husband to feel, and he said, yeah, it's fluffy. And then I just kept feeling, and I was like, I felt just a little bit further, and I was like, holy crap, that's the amniotic sac. And then I felt a little further, and I was like, oh, that's the baby's head. Aww. So yeah, I accepted it. I was like, she's coming. Everybody get ready. She's coming. And at one point, I totally had lost my voice. And so as I was like screaming, like, oh, I said, I am Tarzan. I'm doing this. And anyway, that's just a side note. I just love that. It's so weird.
So weird. Yeah.
Said everything that was coming to my mind. So,
oh my God, the stuff that women say at the end are the sweetest, most like vulnerable, amazing, awkward, hilarious thing. I love it. I'm Tarzan. I'm doing this. Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome.
Because I was like tempted. I think I was like tempted to say I can't do this because it was so difficult. So I said, I am doing this. So it just sounded, anyway, so funny. Yeah. So fetal ejection reflex, man. So I pushed that baby out without thinking about it. And, and she just came out into my arms, yelped, and she was perfectly fine. And I always thought that I'd be, all emotional like I was with my son. But I was just this primal mom, just assessing her newborn, just doing whatever the heck I needed to do. And it just worked. I just did it. So, so I just sat down in the shower and assessed her and sucked stuff out of her mouth and looked at her, and time flew. I every once in a while I was trying to squat to birth the placenta.
Yeah, how'd that go?
And nothing was happening. And about 30 minutes after the baby was born, Exora Eve is her name. Mm-hmm. And so about 30 minutes after, I started to feel lightheaded. And so I was like, okay, do I take the Zytotec? And my intuition said, take it. So I took it, and so I put it under my tongue to suck on. And right when that happened, I dipped into really like I was super out of it, to the point that I was like laughing hysterically. And I don't remember this, but I was laughing hysterically and I was saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Because of course I felt fine. So my husband was very worried. And my doula, she's awesome. She just made eye contact with me and she said, look into my eyes. So I looked into her eyes and right away, I started sucking vigorously on it. I turned to my husband and I said, sorry, I scared you. I love you. I'm going to be just fine. They got on the phone with the midwife and she just said, oh, the placenta needs to come out, see what she's thinking about the placenta. So I squatted. I literally pulled the placenta out of my body and that was that. And I did actually lose a lot of blood. And I was honestly comfortable with the idea of losing a lot of blood as long as I felt good. Since I am anemic, that was something that was, on our minds. But I was like, if I lose a lot of blood and I feel fine, then who cares? Then I'm fine. So, I don't know how necessary taking that was. But what I do know is that I was able to give birth to my placenta and I'm okay now. And my husband and I talked about it and we're like, we might have that on hand next time if we feel inclined to. And if we don't, that's okay too. So that's maybe the one, I guess someone could say, scary part of my birth. But to me, it wasn't scary because we did what we had to do. And yeah.
Also, getting lightheaded isn't a problem either. Like a lot of women faint, a lot of women get lightheaded, a lot of women shake, a lot of women lose blood. And none of that equals a hemorrhage. None of that equals a problem. None of that equals a complication.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that part of this too, way beyond your story, everybody's story, that because we're all so new to relearning birth and how to do it and how to hold space for it and how to both be the birthing woman and, the women with the birthing women and our partners. And just like we are recreating, in this reclamation and after generations of, total robbery of this, I think there isn't like a wrong here, and and at the same time, we have to like relearn and figure out and stumble through what are all of these parts? Like, is it okay to be lightheaded? Is it okay to faint? Is it okay to lose blood? What is that? And is it okay? And is it okay? When's the time to use, to use drugs and when isn't it? And just all of this stuff. And there isn't like a way, right? It's about,
totally.
Like I'll have clients who are like, I want to have a wild pregnancy and I want a free birth. And here's my log of all my weights every day and my blood pressure and my fungal height. And it's like, okay, great. Like if that's how you're stepping out of the system at that pace. Yeah. Or women who are like, similar. I have cytotech on board, or I showed up at this one birth a couple years ago and she had an oxygen tank.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, I don't know what to fucking do with that. Like, I don't fuck around with that shit. And she was like, oh, well, I just thought it would be like great to have. I was like, do you know how to use it? She's like, no. I was like, well, I don't fucking know how to use it. Like, I don't mess around with that. And she was like, oh, well, a midwife just gave it to me. And I just thought it would be like good to have. I was like, okay, except that like none of us know how to use it. Yeah. And I would never do that. Anyway, so point being, with the cytotech, I think that it's really interesting. And I think it opens up a really interesting conversation and exploration of like, because where my brain goes as the challenger and the challenger is like, okay, cool. But if the midwife had never even brought it up, it wouldn't have been on your radar. And so then what would have happened?
Yeah.
And again, there's no right or wrong here. It's kind of just the curiosity. Like it puts me into a state of wonder of like, okay, so you got lightheaded.
Yeah.
And I heard a midwife I really like a long time ago call it the reset, where women sometimes kind of like dip like out and then they kind of come back and it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird for everybody, but from a spiritual perspective, it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a reset. It's like leaving the old life and coming back.
And my husband and I, we saw it as, I mean, for him, it was very hard to watch, but as we were talking about it, we're like, okay, this is information and this is a call to figure out what we are going to do next time, because it could involve medication. It could not involve medication. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just said like, yeah, like, it's like, anyway, it just makes sense. Everything you said makes sense.
Yeah.
I love
and
it.
it sounds like you took it prophylactically, preventatively, as a better safe than sorry kind of, like, I have this thing, things are a little like, ugh, so I'm just going to take it because I've been told that this stops hemorrhage.
Indeed.
And for anyone who doesn't know what Cytotec is, it's the abortion pill. It kills. I mean, it releases, I should say. It is intended to cause very strong contractions and release pregnancy in the beginning, of a pregnancy. It doesn't kill the fetus. That was not correct. It's the part of the medication that causes the contractions. And so it's just so fascinating that now we're like, oh, let's just give it to women to induce their labors. Let's give it to them
to induce.
That Cytotec is the induction drug. Yeah. So it goes Cytotec or Cervidil, which is the gel. So yeah, like pregnant women with term live babies go into the hospital and they're given Cytotec orally to cause, induction. It kills moms and babies. It is shocking how many moms and babies Cytotec kills, and nobody talks about it. Yeah. It's shocking. I've seen women have seizures from it. I've seen moms and babies almost die from it. I've never seen a woman die from it, thank God. But it's never talked about. Same with Cervidil. And then it's used, medical midwives bring it in homes. Typically it's given rectally after Pitocin has been like attempted. So they do like, intermuscular shots of Pitocin for our third stage management. And then if that like doesn't work to the amount that they would want it to, then they would give rectal Cytotec.
Wow.
Anyway, so it's like really hardcore. It's a hardcore drug. Right. And it's a very, very interesting history too. And it's, and I do think it should be available to a degree, for all sorts. I mean, I think women should do whatever the fuck they want. So if a woman wants to say it feels right, that's where I stand. Anyway, so yeah, that is just like a super interesting part of the story. And it sounds like it was scary. I mean, if you were like kind of, dipping out and like kind of talking weird, and that's something really scary.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, it wasn't. I mean, and this probably says a lot, is that for me, it wasn't that scary. It felt almost normal. What did scare me was when I finally came to that my baby wasn't in my arms. My husband, had taken my baby because I was starting to drop her.
Okay. So you were standing up?
No, I was sitting down, and I was sitting down in the shower still. And yeah, she was just on I think I was like crisscross applesauce, and she was just like resting below, and she started to like fall forward.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, so that alarmed me. I was just like, where's my baby? And I was just so alert. And it might've just been honestly me making eye contact with her that helped me to come to. It might not have even been the Cytotec.
Totally.
So yeah, but I just love, I think the positive thing for me is that maybe we wouldn't have known what to do. And maybe my husband would have gotten scared and called the ambulance. Maybe my mom would have gotten scared and called the ambulance. So I think for this birth, it was a little bit on the intuitive side. And I think for my next birth, things are going to be different because we're going to know more when we know better, we do better.
Totally.
But, yeah, it was just so fascinating. I love how when I did come to, I just sat up, I freaking pulled my placenta out of me and was done with it. Like it was just done.
Tarzan style.
Like
Tarzana.
Like it was so primal. Like I just had I never thought someone would like give birth to their placenta like that. Like I literally just yanked it out. Anyway,
Mhm.
but I'm so freaking proud of myself.
Oh my
I
God.
did an amazing job. Like, VBACs are not powerful just because it's hard to have a VBAC. It's
Right.
because you're choosing to not be oppressed anymore. You're choosing to not let people oppress you and make you get a surgery that's unnecessary. So, because the VBAC itself, like, it wasn't hard to not have my uterus, blow up, whatever it's called. Like, that
the
wasn't
rupture
hard.
stuff.
Yeah, rupture. Like, I didn't have to think about that. That's not even an issue. It was just the fact that I didn't let people oppress me in my birth. I did whatever the heck I wanted to, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that's what's up.
So there you go.
What a story to give your family, huh?
Thank you. I'm going to keep giving these stories because I feel like I have a lot more kids coming, and I'm just ready to give birth to all of them. I'm so stoked. I'm so ready to have another kid right now.
Oh my God.
Only had this one for 5 weeks.
Yeah, you better write a letter.
I know.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm so proud of you. It's just such a big deal. It's such a big deal. I mean, this is how
it really is.
We participate in creating the world we want to see. It's such a triumphant and, like you said, so normal. I love how the theme, like one of the themes throughout your whole story is, I knew it was normal. I knew it was normal. I knew it was normal. From your uterus to your septate uterus to breech to all of it. Just
all the things.
Yeah. It was just all good. And you got to actually actualize that and see and kind of bring it into full completion, right? Which is such a deeply healing lesson, I think, for us as women, just working out all the bullshit that's at our back of our ancestors and patriarchy, and to really actualize what you know to be true and then be walking evidence of that truth is so profoundly important, obviously. And yeah, I'm really proud of you too.
Thank you. That's so lovely to hear. So many people are uncomfortable with power stories, which is so sad.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for today, my sisters. Check out everything we do, including one-on-one and group coaching. Learn about our private membership, in-person retreats, and more on freebirthsociety.com. Our online courses are on freebirthsocietycourses.com, including our flagship course, The Complete Guide to Free Birth. Don't miss the Radical Birthkeeper School if you're ready to become the authentic midwife that women are searching for. Together we rise, and the revolution starts inside each of us. I'll leave you with our Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back from the stars.